Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another book review from me, your host, Logan Albright. Today I am continuing my journey through the winners of the Booker Prize because I am trying to become more cultured and read more literary fiction and discover some authors that I haven't heard about. There's this long list of very decorated, very celebrated, award-winning authors who have written dozens of novels who no one has ever heard of. And I want to find out about these people and maybe resuscitate some of their reputations a little bit, because I think that it's a shame for someone to have put all that time and energy into writing these amazing novels and to then be forgotten by history. So I'm trying to revive some of these people and learn about them and see which ones are good and which ones are not good. This is my third Booker Prize winner that I'm reading, and this is the winner of the Lost Booker Prize, the so-called Lost Booker Prize of 1970. What happened was there was a change in the eligibility requirements, where they initially said that we're going to consider books published the previous year, and then in 1971 they said we're going to cover books published this year. And so what that meant is that the winner in 1970 was published in 1969, the winner in 1971 was published in 1971, and all the books published in 1970 kind of got left out. So posthumously, or not, well, I guess posthumously, but not necessarily so, they then awarded a prize, 20 or 30 years later, I forget exactly when it happened, to a book published in 1970 to try to fill in that gap. And the book they chose was Troubles by J.G. Farrell. And this is actually the second book by J.G. Farrell, which has won the Booker Prize. Another book by him in the same series. This is part of his Empire Trilogy, which deals with the British Empire. And the second book in that series takes place in India and was awarded the Booker Prize a few years later. So I'll get to that one eventually. But this is the first one, published in 1970. And it's not really about the Irish War of Independence, but it takes place during the Irish War of Independence. And that's the backdrop of what's going on. And I don't know very much about that war, so I was interested to read about it. And I like Britain and I like Ireland. And so I thought I would enjoy this book. And in fact, I did enjoy this book. I thought it was a lot of fun. Basically what the story is, such as there isn't much of a story in this book. There isn't much of a plot. It's more about atmosphere and about environment and about character than it is about story. But there's a Major Brendan who was serving in the British Army during World War I. He gets discharged and he comes to Ireland, to this fictional village, because he's been corresponding with this woman for the last several years named Angela, and he believes that they are engaged to be married, and so he goes to meet her at her father's hotel, the Majestic, which was once a great and glorious hotel in Ireland, and is now fallen into disrepair and is sort of crumbling and coming apart at the seams. It's infested with various pests, and it's got cats crawling all over the place. It's just not in good shape, but it's this once glorious hotel that's sort of crumbling around them. And he goes to meet her, and he finds when he gets there, she's not that enthusiastic about their meeting as he had expected her to be. And everything's a little weird. And all of her family and the people staying in the hotel and the people in the surrounding town, they're all very eccentric and strange and odd. And the Major, who's an Englishman, is having to kind of get into grips with this strange situation he finds himself in. Meanwhile, the proprietor of the hotel, Edward, is he's a loyalist to the British Empire, although he is Irish. And while this is happening, the Irish National Party, Sinn Féin, is engaging in these terrorist attacks to try to win their independence from the UK, from Britain. And that's going on, and Edward is very angry about this. He thinks that they're traitors and that they should be, loyal to the cause. And so it's all kind of just about this situation, and the Major kind of living in this hotel for an extended period of time. The novel takes place between 1919 and 1921 during the Troubles, and their reaction to what's going on around them politically, and their reaction to the deteriorating state of the hotel, the deteriorating mental state of some of the inhabitants of the hotel, and just this gradual decay that's going on. And I really like the atmosphere of this book because it's got something of the Gothic in it. It reminds me of something like The Fall of the House of Usher, where you have this kind of dynasty that's slowly falling apart, and the house they live in is slowly falling apart. There's this atmosphere of decay and ruin, impending doom, and all these weird, eccentric characters wandering around. I recently read The Sundial by Shirley Jackson, which I loved, and that has a similar feel of just all these weird characters in this old house where everything's just gradually coming apart at the seams. And I love that kind of style. It's got that with a little bit of a Celtic flavor from the Irish here. So I thought that was a lot of fun. It's it's a humorous novel. I wouldn't like the cover describes it as hilarious. I think critics of literary fiction have a different definition of hilarious than I do. I certainly wouldn't call it hilarious, but there's a dark irony. There's a little bit of humor. There's a little bit of absurdity in some of the situations that go on. And it was, amusing. I wouldn't, I don't know that I laughed out loud too much during it, but I did find it amusing. Again, the atmosphere is really cool. The weird characters are very fun. And then just kind of getting to learn a little bit about this period in history and what was going on during this Irish Revolution was interesting to me because I really didn't know anything about that. And you don't learn a ton about it because it's not like the central feature of the plot, but it is the background of everything that's going on, and you learn a little bit. And one of the things that struck me was how similar some of the conversations are in this book to what I hear around me now. For example, there's an argument that the proprietor of the hotel, Edward, has with the major, and they're arguing about the tactics of the British National Army, basically. And what happened was there was a terrorist attack by the Irish nationalists, and the British Army, the Black and Tans, responded with basically burning down an entire village. And the major's upset by that, and he says, like, that's irresponsible and you're hurting innocent people, and you should go after the people responsible for the terrorist attack. And the Edward, the hotel manager, is upset, is saying, no, that's ridiculous. Like, the British have to defend themselves against these traitors, and they're all the Irish people are in it together, and they all support them, and so you can't just weed out the individual people. You have to go get all of them. They argue back and forth about whether that's a appropriate strategy, whether it's humane or not. And I think, that's a very similar argument to an argument I'm hearing about what's going on in the war between Israel and Palestine at the moment. So it just goes to show you the more things change, the more they stay the same. There's relevance to reading history. And it's one of the things I think is really important about reading history is kind of understanding how things got the way they are, how situations arose in the past, how they were resolved in the past, and then trying to apply those lessons to the present. So I found that really interesting and a lot of fun. The novel does drag a little bit in the middle. Like I said, there's not really much of a plot. It's pretty slow. It's basically just wandering around the hotel, looking at things and architecture and people and the kind of plotting day-to-day life of old ladies staying in the hotel who are playing whist in the lobby and things like that. It kind of really captures the kind of drudgery of this day-to-day existence with nothing really to occupy your time. And that may sound uninteresting or a lot boring to people. And I did find it did drag a little bit in the middle. I was a little bit bored during parts of it, but overall, I thought the prose was really well structured, really well written. Each sentence is crafted very expertly by the author, and there are funny parts, and there are interesting parts, and there are historical parts, and there's romance involved, and I found it very enjoyable. So I will look forward to, in a few more Booker Prize years later, I'll get to the second novel in this trilogy of the Empire Trilogy, which are not connected stories. They're not like chronologically linked, but they are all thematically linked in that they have to do with the implications of the British Empire. And the second one takes place in India. That's the one that won the Booker Prize in 1973, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So I'll look forward to getting to that. But I had never heard of J.G. Farrell, so now I know about him. I think he only wrote these 3 novels and then died very young. So we didn't leave a huge legacy, but it's interesting to read about this stuff. So I enjoyed it. Yet another Booker Prize winner that I thought was good. So far, I have not come across a bad one, although this is the only the fourth Booker Prize winner I've read, the third in a row. I read Life of Pi, which was published much later, obviously, years ago, and I thought that was okay. I didn't love it. I thought it was all right. But when I started at the beginning, and I'm going chronologically from the first year it was offered, so far I've liked all these novels. So it's been a great source of finding out new authors and finding out new novels. I'm experiencing a lot of literary fiction that I otherwise might not have encountered because I read a lot of like 19th century literary fiction, but I don't read a lot of 20th century literary fiction. So this is fun for me. I'm learning a lot. That's really all I have to say about Troubles. I would recommend it if you're into the history of Ireland. I'd recommend it if you're into that sort of Gothic, almost William Faulkner-esque. It reminds me of like A Rose for Emily, one of those kind of things. That kind of Gothic storytelling, you might enjoy it for that. And if you don't mind a slow novel that doesn't have a racing plot or a lot of action in it, you might enjoy it. I thought it was good. It's about 450 pages long, so it's a medium-length novel. Not super long, but not super short. Takes a little while to get through. That's all I got for that novel, and if you have read it and you have thoughts on it, please leave them in the comments down below. In the meantime, I will be back. Next week will not be a Booker Prize winner. Next week is going to be something a little lighter and a little more fun, maybe. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if it's good or not, but it's going to be something that is not quite so serious. So make sure you check back for that next Wednesday. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this review, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, leave me comments down below, and check back every single Wednesday for another book review from me, your host, Logan Albright. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.